that's kind of the beauty of AI, is like the ability to personalize for each individual person. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to see where it goes and kind of being able to build at the precipice of AI, because we're building into a system that we hope is going to get better, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, at ChatGPT 4, it's functioning at a certain level, but at 5, it's going to be even better. At 6, it's going to be even better. In of itself, is just going to get better as time goes on. So
Yeah.
that's going to be really exciting to see.
Win all in, play my cards right. Up the ante, won blackjack all night. Roll the dice, let it ride. Water the odds, I got snake eyes.
Entrepreneur Perspectives is produced by Quiet Loud Studios, a production company and content network. Learn more at quietloudstudios.com. We have an insurance brokerage business. And so our clients are wealth managers, typically like the wires, banks, commercial agencies, that kind of thing. So we're going B2B, doing third party, going direct to their clients. So they have hundreds, if not thousands of clients. And been doing that for a long time. And that industry is the life insurance industry. So we're doing it like more with businesses and business clientele, also consumers, entrepreneurs, founders, all that kind of thing. And what I started realizing, and this is pre-COVID, is like 2013, I had moved over and started my own business. And the stories are just getting old in the insurance industry. It's such an archaic business, and it's a good business, right? Sometimes the boring businesses are actually good.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah. And nowadays, everyone's just like looking for the sexy thing, right? And I get it, right? And I'm sure you live in that world of like, let's create the new AI thing. And that's absolutely right. And so I was showing up and just creating, telling stories, the same story. I'm like, I'm bored. I don't want to do this for the next, how many years. Start creating content, started blogging, doing all that. And everyone's like, don't do that. That's stupid. Like all that kind of stuff. So it was funny. Then there was like one founder, a business owner in Utah, and he had somehow we connected on Twitter. And he's like, can you do this for me? And I'm like, yeah, let's do that. So we started helping him. And his story wasn't like, he was great. He was doing amazing things. But his story had nothing to do with like his business, really. It was about like who he was as an individual. And if I had a kid, I would want my kid to go work for that guy because of all the other stuff. And then everything else was like just part of it. So we started creating that. And then fast forward, had a few people come in and said, like, you should have a podcast. You should start talking to people online. I'm like, that's weird. Like, how would I do that? We started doing it, and fast forward. Yeah. So, and then you start realizing, right, it's like the whole Naval Ravikant, right? Like the coding and the leverage that you can create from coding, but then like media is the other one, human labor is the other. So I was just kind of floored I always felt like in that transactional community, you had to be there, get the transaction, get the deal done, work through that deal, work through that timeline. Whereas in like media, someone could just reach out to you because they heard your podcast or read a blog post or whatever, and that could lead to who knows what. So it was like very different in that space. So now I see it as like just creating media assets, and the assets sometimes people pay us. So we'll do podcast production for companies, which has been awesome. And then I get to watch that founder who's like, I don't know if I want this. Or it's not just podcasts. It could be a blog. It'd be social media. It could be like, hey, let's just talk and turn it into snippets and whatever. Or who knows what it turns into. And you watch that individual be like, this is what I like to do more than everything else, because now I'm casting the vision. I'm thinking through ideas. I'm doing all this stuff. And so, that plus our own content like this, and I get to talk to people like you. Like I said before, I have 3 kids, one in college, one's on his way to college. So I've gone through the process. I'm watching it, and I'm just always fascinated and trying to learn. And so it's like, wait, so I can have this conversation with you, and it doesn't always have to have like this positive ROI. Like there's just this unknown thing. So your question led to me a lot of different thoughts on all of it. But what were you saying?
I was just saying, I think that there's definitely something beautiful in the idea of like putting something out into the world, and people might stumble upon it, whether that's a few days, few hours, few weeks, few years down the line, and just connect people and connect ideas. And it's just a thing that exists out in the world. And yeah, I think it's definitely something really, really beautiful and powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Like sales is real, right? Like I think there's a lot of people who are afraid of it, but you have to ask questions, right? But it has to be done genuinely. So it's like, I can reach out, and I know like, hey, if I reach out, I genuinely want to talk to you. Like, I'm not just going to reach out to random people and like, let's talk or let's do. And I have no intent of like, this has to go. So like, it could just be an awesome conversation. Like that's, like you said, that to your point about like, that's the beautiful thing. And not that long ago, you couldn't have done this. And now you can. And then, I don't know, you just be better for it. And it helps other people too. So anyway, yeah. So that's kind of how all that started. And it's just ongoing, as you know. And I heard you talking on, I think it was like This Week in Ed Tech. I don't know when that was. Might have been like a year ago or 6 or a few months, or maybe just recently. Like you're exploring at Kollegio, like you're exploring so many different avenues with where this could go. Like maybe you do it like you're this grandmaster scheme of like, here's what's going to end up. But like, I don't think you're making any bones about it. Like this could go in so many different directions.
Yeah, I definitely think when you're building something as a tech startup, and just kind of to your first initial point, like about insurance and boring businesses, I definitely think boring businesses are great and important for the world. But I'm really grateful to be able to be on the other side where it's like, okay, maybe there's a 90% failure rate, but this is kind of where a lot of the excitement and innovation happens, which I guess it's part and parcel of the equation where it's like, okay, you get to be part of something exciting, but if I invested in laundromats and I was like, I don't know, opening laundromats, I'm sure I'd have a much more stable source of income that I'd be building. But yeah, it's definitely in terms of vision and like how we go, it's like, it's actually pretty interesting because when you talk to certain people, like I think now, like 2 years into the company, now I'm talking a lot about what's happening right now, just because we're actually a very difficult business that we've decided to set up. And I'm happy to dive in more about the specifics. But on one side, we have students and students don't pay us. So it's like we have a product that's for the students that doesn't make us any money. And then as students use the platform and we get to know them really well, then all of a sudden it becomes very valuable for colleges. And then colleges come and want to have virtual events and want to be listed and market to students and things like that. So it's this interesting kind of marketplace that we've set up. And I think that it definitely can be super successful and it can be the future, but it's the type of business that can only exist with venture capital and all of these kind of other systems, just because it's been nearly 2 years and it's setting up this process, right? And setting up kind of the marketplace. And now we're working with nearly 100,000 students and we have awesome institutional partners and things like that. But it's something that if I was bootstrapping or trying to do from day one, it wouldn't necessarily occur. But over the course of these 2 years, it's always been about selling the vision of what we're going to become and where we're going to go. And it's, I think, less of a master plan and more of a story that we tell, and a story of imagine a world if every student, no matter who they were, where they came from, could access this level of personalized career guidance coaching and college guidance coaching that traditionally was only reserved for the uber wealthy. And it's, what does that world look like, and sharing that. And that's, I guess, what the majority of the past 2 years have been. And then recently, I think in the last 3-4 months, it's been now a lot more that we're at a stage of, okay, we can actually tangibly do things as a business ourselves, which also has been really, really cool. So it's not just those far-sighted conversations, but it's also like engaging in partnerships. And we're hoping to get a few really exciting partnerships off the ground with some really awesome players who are existing in the space in the next few weeks. But yeah, it's kind of those two conversations, like what can happen right now and what can happen in the future. And for the majority of the 2 years, it's just been talking about what can happen in the future.
Yeah, I get that. When you're helping give access to this counseling to go to college, right? And typically there'd be a massive cost to it, whether you go to a private school or you hire someone independently, which I believe you did some of that work as well. And then you realize, like, wait a second, what's going to get me up in the morning to do this? You can't do that and then say, on top of it, we're going to charge you, I don't know, a subscription fee, right? Or a large payment fee on the front end of it. So that's that combination, like you're saying before, of like, okay, we're going to give you access to this, but we need funding in order to make this thing work so we can give access to the student that otherwise would not have that, right? That's the complicated thing, I think, one of the things you're talking about.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think there are players in the space who try to do that. They try to charge folks, and best of luck to them. But I think that was also our initial thesis, right? Where it's like, okay, the average person in the United States is paying $5,000 to $10,000 for this service. And now we want to like bring it to 1% of the price point where they're paying, $50 to $100. But then the reality is that there's still so many people who are left out because of that. And it's twofold. One, which I'm kind of grateful, very grateful how this played out, but it's like on one end, you have like the impact side, right? So it's like I can be more impactful, reach more first generation, low income English as a second language students, which are the majority of students on the platform, if the platform is completely free. And then two, also from the business perspective, I can actually achieve more widespread distribution and create more value if it's free. So it's kind of like these two prevailing concepts that we're running with at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. Do the universities at some point become part of the funding mechanism for what you all are doing? Like the students you don't want to pay probably.
Yeah. So universities do pay us, and that's how essentially we'd make money. So it's very interesting. A university on average will pay $3,000 on marketing per student per year, right? So that's non-personnel spend. So if the college down the street, like I live in the Bay Area, Menlo College, for example, or Santa Clara University, if they want to enroll 1,000 students, they're spending upwards of $3,000 per student. So that's $3 million in marketing spend. That's not staff, that's just marketing. So it's really quite a large untapped market. And the thesis is, okay, instead of spending, like on a billboard, right? Like old school marketing, where Facebook ads, where we can actually find the students who are one, relevant to you, and then two, communicate to them about the things that they actually care about in a language that they understand. So Eric, if you love to play soccer, if you're in your high school music club, you should be learning about Menlo College's soccer team and music clubs and things like that, right? And that's the level of personalization we can get to. And it's something that's really valuable for colleges because we have a depth and breadth of students that is really never been seen before in the market, because students come and they use our platform for hours, over weeks, months, and years. So it's really that deeper engagement that we see there. And on the flip side, for the student, we're also like very avidly a student first platform. We're not trying to put our finger on the scale in any way. It's like, if you're a kid and none of our college partners are a good fit for you, that's totally fine. Like those will just be the colleges that are hosting events on the platform and things like that, right? So it's just the space that we've created where student success is our number one priority. And that's from like an ethical, moral, and impact perspective, what we want to do. But also from a business perspective, we win when every student comes on and we become their trusted partner and they have the best possible experience as well.
Yeah. If a university's paying, let's say, or obviously not just one, maybe many universities paying, someone's paying more, someone's paying less, are you able to remove the bias that might exist inside of that platform to say, well, yeah, Santa Clara's paying a lot of money, so therefore they're going to show up as more relevant to your students? I'm assuming that's obviously been thought through on you guys, but like for people to know that, I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's, kind of going back to my point about how much we care about the student success. It's really just all about what's the best right fit for you, right? And Santa Clara can, like if they pay us, they'll get exposure vis-a-vis like having a virtual event or being able to message students who were relevant to them and things like that. Like students opt into that kind of communication, which is, from a privacy perspective, exactly as College Board or Common App and these other applications function. It's in line and even actually maybe better in class as compared to them. But those colleges basically get a chance to reach out to students who are directly interested in them, and they get a chance to host events and things like that. But if we have for example, one of our tools, we have like an AI recommendation quiz. Like it's never going to be the case where if somebody's not a good fit for Santa Clara University or let's say Kollegio University, that we're going to say that, oh, you should definitely apply to Kollegio University. One, because that ruins the student experience, right? In the short, medium, and long term. And two, the college, if we send them a bunch of students who churn after 1 year, that's also not great for them, right? So it's not good for the students, it's not good for the colleges. And that's why part of the reason why we're really focused on the great student outcomes.
Yeah, of course. And if it becomes obvious that there's a bias, then it won't work anymore and the business won't work. So it's like always doing the right thing always works. The college app process, like I talked to you about before, 3 kids, 2 of them, one's in college, one's on their way to college, and going through it, and both different kids and both have different interests of what they want to do. It's a fascinating experience, right? If you don't have the experience with it, it's so hard. and I've talked to plenty of parents and kids, and then you see the stress and you see the anxiety, and then you see society talking to you and what you have to do. And this is the direction. And why aren't you, whatever. And what did you get on your scores? And how many APs did you take? And how are you going to make your application look so like the best? And then like, what did you do? Right. So I feel for a lot of parents and kids, because I'm like, if they don't even know where to go, how would they manage this entire process? And then you go show up on some of these campuses and you see the mental health crisis is real right now, right? There's a loneliness epidemic, right? There's all these things going on. What are you seeing with this whole college application process? Like you just talked about the different platforms that exist out there. Like, where are we going with this? Is this just going to continue down this path, or is this why you're in existence today, to like try to help people make sense of what's going on? Because it's a mess.
Yeah. So it's actually very interesting on many levels. So the first thing I'd say is actually let's just classify them into two worlds, right? So I was very much part of the world that you were describing, right? Where it's like, how do I make the best possible application? How do I get into the best possible top 100 school? All of that stress. And definitely, even as a founder who's been my company has been close to bankruptcy and things like that, which maybe we can get into, but
yeah,
college apps was still probably one of the most stressful times in my life, which is kind of hilarious to think about. Hilarious and sad, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's one segment of, right, where it's like all of these students are targeting the top 100 schools and they're coming from more affluent families, and it's kind of like this rat race almost, where it's exactly what you said, super competitive. Like in the Bay Area, it's probably, I don't want to say, if I had to guess, it's probably the most competitive in the world. Like I see ninth graders, right, first year of high school, and they've got internships, and the kid is coming to me and talking about starting a startup, which is great, right? But I don't know how much they feel that their environment is forcing them to do that, right? Versus like when I was in ninth grade, like I barely knew that what college was, right? I was like, oh, that's the thing that people go to and things like that. But I see it as just getting more and more competitive, for sure. And there's also a different world, right? Where the majority of people actually belong, which is like, do I go to college or not, right? And that's maybe like, should I go to my community college? Do I go to my local state school? Maybe I go to my state flagship, right? If I'm very smart or feeling very adventurous. Or maybe I go to a trade school, or maybe I don't go to college. And this is like a world where the majority of students are kind of operating in. And both of these worlds are really in for an upheaval, right? Because the costs are going up. You know, there's demographic cliffs that are taking place. There are like less people who are entering the college going time. And schools, like four-year institutions are in particular, are really struggling because many of them have to redefine themselves, right? How do I justify an $80,000 price tag when my average, graduation alumni salary is $50K, right? And it's actually a complete separate story that most people don't actually pay the sticker price, but colleges are really in for that upheaval. And to your question about how we see that path of like all of that uncertainty, like I think that's really where we're trying to play as hopefully a trusted partner, where we can help figure out what that right next best step is for you. Because there's so many students, like I was just talking to, I won't take his name, but somebody who's like a very average student and from a very wealthy family. And it's like they're being forced into kind of this, everybody goes to college in that high school, right? Then there might be other people who are very bright people, but nobody goes to college in that high school, right? Or very few people go to college and they're first gen student. So it's like, how can we kind of optimize outcomes? And I think that's kind of where Kollegio comes in, because it's like, hey, let me dynamically work with you so that we can figure out what the next right best step is for you, whether that's a 4-year college, whether that's a 2-year college, whether that's a trade school, whether that's a coding boot camp, right? Whatever that next right best step is for you, let me show you what it might look like, what your life after that might look like, where you might go and like achieve that, and then how you might pay for it, and then how you might qualify yourself to get into that school. That's really where we're playing right now. And hopefully that can alleviate some of the stress. But I think a lot of the stress from that kind of top 100 school version is just this kind of prestige race and so society kind of pressuring folks. I think it's going to be very tough to alleviate pressure there. But maybe as more folks from that segment choose not to go to college and do other things, society might destigmatize that.
Yeah. You hear more people talking about it now. I mean, I'm sure you've heard like the All In podcast, and Chamath gets on there and he starts talking about at a time when he wants one of his kids to go to the prestigious, the Ivies, the whatever. And then the kid shows up one day and says, I want to go to an SEC school. And then early on, he would have been like freaking out. He's like, you're not going to Alabama or Mississippi. Now he's like, no, I actually think that's the right decision for him. And there's a lot baked in there, right? They get into the political side of stuff, and we don't have to go down that path right now. But that is changing. Like, you see the numbers of the students coming down here. So living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and you're an ACC and Southeastern Conference country, that the numbers to go to school at South Carolina, at Georgia, the applications are through the roof, right? And they're building great programs there, where like 20 years ago, that wasn't like, you would just send in your application and when do you start? Like, when do I show up for my first day of school type of thing? And it's not the case anymore. You went to Stanford, right? And you just graduated, which is wild. So like, you're already like doing amazing things. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
So you're very close to it. Like you said, it wasn't that long ago. You were living in this world and like, wow, that was crazy. That was my most stressful time of my life. Now that you've gone through that and you're kind of like sitting back laughing at it, I'm sure Stanford did a lot of great things for you. So it's not that these universities are all bad, right? It's just that prestige thing is real. And Stanford is one of those schools that's in that world of prestige. Like, how do you look at that knowing what you just experienced? And you're probably still gaining a lot from that world. Like, where does that come to mind? Because you're also, I could hear you in when you say it, it sounds very real of like, you're seeing a student and you're not judging them to say if they want to go to a 2-year trade school or not go to college. Like, we just had someone else on the podcast, and Ankit was talking about, he was a former Google employee, his partner's a former Apple employee. He's like, I could care less where you went to college. Show me what you've built, type of thing. Anyway, saying all that, like, what comes to mind for you as it relates to like the world you were just in?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think universities are being more and more challenged on the product, right? And it's a very competitive time, right? To say it lightly. And people have to define for themselves, is my product competitive? Am I competitive on price, program, campus? What can I do to justify why I should exist in a way that previously there has not been as much pressure? And we're seeing enrollment leaders being extremely, extremely forward-thinking, as well as extremely defensive, right? And I think the second you start playing defense is when you start getting stuck in the tar pit. And then once you're in the tar pit of, okay, I'm like in a budget deficit and I'm going to cut spending, and then I'm going to get more deficit and cut more spending, I think that's a downward spiral that's very difficult to get out of. Versus on the other side, more forward-thinking enrollment leaders are willing to engage with different solutions, think about repositioning their brand, and kind of take these more brave steps to redefine themselves, think about outreach differently, think about programs and product differently to really justify why they should exist. And then we see a lot of thriving there also, right? So in a month, I probably speak to like 40, 45 different colleges on average. So I'm speaking to a lot of different colleges, and I'm really on the pulse of what's going on. And I'm really seeing this dichotomy of people who are kind of turtling up and people who are, okay, we have XYZ amount of time to achieve XYZ. Who are the people that can help me on this journey? And how can I reposition my brand to reach the right students and offer them a convincing product, right? And that's kind of the unfortunate reality of what's going on in higher ed. That's one piece. And then kind of to your thought about prestige and signal, I think that the old concept of education that came from the Romans and then the Middle East and then Europe and all of this, like the old like tradition of education is actually very different from what it is now, right? Because if it's like, what's like the degree that I can get that gets me the highest paying job, that's not really what the old concept of education was, where it was like, okay, wealthy people come and they study philosophy or they study theology or like English language and things like that. And it's kind of like what you might associate Oxford with and these universities. And there's not really much linkage between job prospect and education and like higher education in particular. But that's because those people are, wealthy aristocrats and things like that anyways. So it's kind of interesting that there are these universities that have that prestige factor, and it's like maybe they do have really strong engineering programs and things like that. But there are a lot of universities also who just, appeal to wealthy folks, and they can go there and study a degree that maybe isn't linked to some financial outcome as much. And it's just for that older concept of education. But of course, that's not for the broader public, where it's like, okay, I need to get a degree, and I need to, if I'm investing $100,000, I need to be able to have that ROI on it. So that's kind of a different concept to what the older concept of education that's kind of more linked to that prestige, where you see a lot of, wealthy folks coming in and studying those types of other degrees, which also I have, no disrespect for. Like, if you can do it, definitely that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. What's weird is like you go social media, right? And everyone's like, don't go to college or go to college. Like, let's polarize it somehow. And let's argue about it. You're right, I'm wrong. Right. Well, actually, I'd be right, you'd be wrong.
Yeah.
But like in that scenario, it's actually getting real with yourself and using the tools and using the people like yourself and your tool Kollegio to say, what's best for me, and getting real with that, as opposed to not what's best for my classmates and for their parents and for the high school that I go to. How do I get real with myself, which is a mindset thing, right? Like, and then it's using the tools and leaning on your trusted advisors, just like you would do in anything in life, that there is no one answer. So you're not going to say, yeah, I think Stanford's a joke, don't go to Stanford. They're just going to take your money and make it. At the other end, you might be like, Stanford's amazing if you want to do this, right? So, and that goes for all like directions that you could possibly go with this. It's not some one size fits all. And I can hear that coming from you. And then it makes me think like, okay, it's 2025. Where is college in 2030? Like, that's 5 years from now. And I don't think we all know, right, what's going to happen, like where AI is going. Like, it's funny, I saw Ohio State University, one of the largest universities in the country, their president came out and said, we're going to be, I think it's AI fluency, and they're going to teach a class on it, right? All this kind of stuff. So on surface, it's like, okay, cool. A university is going to go out there and we're going to teach artificial intelligence to these kids. Like, they're going to understand it. They're going to be able to use it, maybe even in the classrooms. You go to Reddit threads, of which there's a lot because it's such a large university. And they're like, can you refund my money then? Since AI is going to be doing this teaching and the university is not going to be doing it, right? So it plays on the other side, and it's kind of not been a fallout from it, but a little bit, right? At least on the Reddit boards. So I just don't know what happens from here today, 25, to, let's say, what does college look like in 2030? I don't know if you have an answer on it, but I'm sure you have like talking points or thoughts on it, right?
Yeah, I definitely think in terms of AI fluency and like running away from AI, like I talk to people who are super interested. Like, there was one enrollment officer I spoke to in Austin, actually, St. Edward's University. I think he wouldn't mind me mentioning. But he was like, oh, I use Gemini in my workflow and I encourage my team to use it. And they're like very into it. And I know other folks, like someone in Aurora University, for example, they have like an AI policy. And then other folks I speak to are like, oh, I'm unsure about how we're going to engage with the AI. And they're kind of taking that approach. But in terms of where college is in 2030, I think there's kind of three main strands. And this is something I've thought about. It's like the traditional college, right? And it's like the traditional college that's able to become more efficient and pivot, and they still have that core in-person experience that's, very valuable for folks. And it's the ones like you mentioned, maybe some SE schools, but I think hopefully the majority of colleges that are going to survive this tumultuous time and be able to offer like a strong brand presence, a strong product to their students. Then they're like the online schools. So that's like WGU, and there are a few others that have these really strong online programs that are really great for adult learners and things like that. And then there's maybe something completely different. So I think it's called Outsmart College. So it's the ex-CTO of Duolingo, and he's essentially made this kind of Duolingo style bite-sized clips where people can swipe and like kind of consume college level courses and get credits in a bite-sized way, like 5 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time. So that's kind of interesting, like those completely new pathways. And then I think community colleges are also emerging as a real winner, like trade schools. So I think for 4 year, you kind of have these three brands where it's like the traditional one that's adapted, the online one that's, becoming more popular, maybe something completely different where you have like core trainings, maybe companies offer like direct trainings directly, like, okay, after high school, do this like 2-3 year program, and then you can get a job that's like six figures or something like that. And then there's the traditional community colleges and trade schools, which I think are poised to do really well as well off this windfall. That's kind of how I would lay out the ecosystem right now.
Yeah. Your mindset when it comes to this is unique. Like I said before, I talk to so many people and they have this specific, this is where it's going, right? And you're in the industry and you're trying to help out a wide array of students, right? And not everyone's cut out, not even cut out, I shouldn't say that. They're not, you don't have to be a founder of a tech startup company, right? Like there's so many different things that you can do in this world. And I think we get caught up in like, oh, this or wealth or what, like what's important to you, and going back down to that point of it. And you watching these universities at play. Like I've watched Arizona State, who has their in-person thing, right? They're in Tempe, Arizona. It's a great experience. They built the online program. And so you see they're going out there and they're trying to educate the masses on their online, which is different, very different than being on campus in Tempe University, right? And they're building other campuses in other places and they're becoming very large. Then their technology, right? Number one in innovation, and like some of the students laugh at it. But then when you get into the system and see it, you're like, actually, they're not running off of legacy systems. They're actually running off a system that looks like it was actually built in 2025, not in 1990. And you're like, okay, well, there's something there to it, right? Like you can actually get their curriculum, even though you might not have direct access to the advisor every day. There's something with the technology that you see. You're like, they're not doing that at most universities. Their technology is so off, right? So I think that school's been around for a long time, so they can run a hybrid approach and do it all, as opposed to other universities who are locking the doors. We're not letting you in unless you have this thing going for you and you've traveled abroad and you have 6 different majors. And that's not bad either, right? But there's just a lot of options out there. And we need to help students, families, universities, high schools, counselors, whoever, understand what all is out there. There's another part about college that's frustrating, which is the cost of college. It's out of control, right? And the loan situation is out of control. And it's hard to teach a 17 or 18-year-old, like, what does that look like in 4 years and 20 years, right? And a lot of times these people will marry, one goes to college, they don't have a loan. Then they marry someone, they do have a loan, and they're paying off a $200,000 loan. And like, wait a second, that's on my books now, right? So that's a real thing as it comes to it. But I've heard you talk about where like, and you just said it before, like these universities are spending $3,000 per student on the marketing. Then there's all sorts of other costs and they got to keep up with it. So you're going to go visit the University of Kentucky and you're also going to go visit the University of Alabama. Like who's got the better gym? Who's got the better dorms? Who's got the better food? Like all this stuff costs a lot of money. And I think you said, and you can teach us on this, like the colleges aren't making a lot more money today. I think there's some universities like a Harvard or an Ohio State that have huge endowments, right? But that's different. Help us understand, like, are the universities not making as much, and do they have to raise the cost because they have no other choice to do it? Like, why are we in a situation that we're in where the money's not the same as it was 10, 20, 50 years? Definitely wasn't 50 years ago. It was like $300 per semester. But you see what I'm getting at when it comes to the money. Are the universities still making a lot of money, even though, I'll stop there. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course. So I think that there was an interesting article that I was reading the other day that was showing how the average tuition price has gone up, but so has the average discount rate quite a lot. And essentially what that results in is net money that colleges are taking home has kind of more or less remained stagnant when you're accounting for inflation and these types of things. So an average discount rate, like if a college on a sticker price costs $80,000, the average discount rate would be 50% or something akin to that. So we're really seeing those kind of high discount rates where people are, and that's kind of something colleges do to recruit students and make the students also feel valued, where, yeah, like maybe the sticker price is 80,000, but okay, Eric, we're going to give you a presidential scholarship and you get $20,000 off a year and things like that. But I think cost is definitely something that colleges really have to reconcile with, right? Like one, they do have their existing costs. Like it's not easy to pay for someone's room and board for 4 years, but also understanding like how much do classes cost and how much do professors' times cost and things like that. And then we're seeing like a lot more hybrid approaches, a lot more innovative approaches, but also perhaps cutting down on the amount of bureaucracy. And maybe that's something that AI can help with a lot. And I know I'm seeing a lot of startups in that space. So I think it's a lot of how much can colleges reconcile all the different things that are going on within their own house. And then at the same time, offer a compelling product to different students, different segments, understand why people are paying, how much they're willing to pay, how much they should pay, and just thinking about that in a dynamic way.
So the colleges, while they're not making as much as we might think, like the colleges keep raising it and the families just keep paying it, right? But what you're saying is it's not like the colleges are just raking in cash. But what they could be doing is maybe lowering their costs on the front end in some other ways that would allow them to make more money, that they obviously need to make some money, and then in turn lower the costs back to the families. Is that right?
It's all linked to career readiness, right? Because we're in a place where that you go to college to get a good job, right? That's the vast majority of people, right? And if you can't guarantee that good outcome, right, then it's like, how can you justify the cost, right? So I think having that really strong pipeline, and that's why things like AI fluency and things like that are super important, because it's like, okay, do you have places where people can learn the most up-to-date things in a world that is changing so rapidly, where frankly, in 2-3 years, traditional computer science programs, frankly, even now, like I have friends who've studied at Stanford, done, masters in computer science from, the best computer science school, and they're struggling to get employed, right? So imagine for the rest of the world who wants to study computer science. And it's like, these are traditionally one of the programs with the highest ROI, right? And this is something that's rapidly changing. And now we're going to see entry-level law positions and accounting positions and all of these entry-level white-collar jobs really shifting. And it's like, these are the traditional reasons why people went to university, right? So this is also kind of part of that overall market dynamic that's really affecting the way students are thinking about college and how colleges should be thinking about it as well.
Yeah. The AI fluency, I could argue that, do I want to learn if I'm a student, or if I'm a parent who's a student going to school, do I want my student learning or this learning from the university about how to use AI? Or do I want them learning from you or me or someone else? Like, does the university even know how to teach this because it's so new? And okay, cool, we're going AF, and they should. So they're gonna have to hire for that though. Because if these professors aren't ready for it, well, just because you were given, it's like you said soccer before. So just because the person's a history teacher and they watched a soccer game the other day doesn't mean they should be your soccer coach, right? But at the university or at the school, we need someone to teach soccer, so they're gonna be the coach, right? Just because you're there and you watched some videos about AI and you like it doesn't mean you should be teaching the student how to use AI. Like, I'd rather find someone who actually knows how to use it, or get on YouTube, right? And you can learn how to use it, or open up ChatGPT and Gemini and Grok and whatever and just start messing with it. Again, you need guidance and mentorship and all that, but is it the university's best job for that? Like, it always goes back to, shouldn't they be teaching money in schools, right? Shouldn't they be talking about finance in schools? Yes. But at the same time, like, you could also learn finance without it. Like, go read about Warren Buffett, go watch some videos, listen to podcasts, read other books, talk to some mentors, go intern, like that kind of thing. Is it the school's job? Not even job. Is it, do we want our students learning AI from people that maybe don't even have that expertise in doing that? That's concerning, because like you said, when they graduate in 2030, 2040, and so on, maybe they don't even have jobs. Like you said, the job market for computer science degree people, like, okay, maybe it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a great point of like, who's the right person to teach AI. And I think that's really interesting, where it's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily have to be in a school environment. And historically, it's very interesting, even at a school like Stanford, where there's such a huge prestige factor. So many of my friends who wanted to go into finance, something I also thought about for a while, that's not something that's really taught much in school. And it's a lot of self-study that those kids are doing outside of school.
Right.
There are courses, like I know there's one person we're talking to potentially hiring. She's studying sales at Indiana University. And a lot of, like, a school like Stanford doesn't even offer sales, right?
Yeah.
It's like such a necessary thing. It's like there's a disconnect between what's wanted, what's needed, and what's offered. And then also, is that institution even the best place to teach it, and versus like a sales crash course, right? But then it's also the signaling, like, would person hire someone based on just the fact that they've done a crash course, or the fact that they have some experience without the degree? Like, I think the degree gives you a level of signal that's different. And until we start perceiving it differently as a society, where it's like, okay, this person doesn't have a bachelor's degree, but they know how to sell really well. Okay, are Am I just going to hire this 18 or 19-year-old now instead of the 21 or 22-year-old? But maybe the salary expectations are different. It becomes this weird dichotomy. But if someone has, let's say, 3 or 4 years of work experience that's relevant instead of college, that person is probably worth more than someone who went to college. But again, it's also so much of work is interpersonal relationships and things like that that it becomes really interesting. And I think that as people really think about these questions and as they're pushed to the forefront, we'll see, I think a change in the number of colleges, because it's also fascinating. The United States has nearly 4,000 higher education institutions. Someone like the United Kingdom, the UK has, I believe the number is just under 200.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
you can see the difference here. Does every student need to go to college? Is that the right step? Do we need so many institutions? And I think that question is really, it's a scary one, but it's the one that's on everybody's minds.
Yeah, it is. I know of schools that have been shut down, right? They had to raise, there's a school here, Limestone University. It's in the Gaffney, South Carolina. So it's like a couple hours away from here. There's outlet malls there. Like that's why you know it. Well, there's Limestone. Limestone University had been there over 100 plus years. And they had to raise $6 million and they raised $2 million and they had just closed the school. So they graduated their final class. I think it was 1,600 kids, 900 of them were student athletes, and they were all out of a university. So this has been happening more and more. And you don't exactly know why that is. And they probably didn't have the money in reserves. They didn't have the endowment, whatever. That's a challenge. And those kids got to go transfer. And so some of these bigger schools can probably take them on and they'll help them out. But so you think there could be a situation to where, like in business, where they all are becoming part of the larger state, like that school could have been, that's a private school, I think, I don't know, but become part of the larger state university where they have like add another campus type of thing, or they're gonna have to do something and consolidate like we see in business?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of amalgamations closing down. Like the stat was in 2024, one college per month has been closing down on average. So I think that number is increasing, if anything. I know there was Penn West University that's now like 3 campuses, which were 3 separate entities before. And now it's like if a professor teaches one class somewhere, that same class is being broadcasted to the other 2 campuses at the same time. And they're kind of taking on these innovative methods.
Yeah.
But it's, okay, how can I convince people in my own backyard to attend? And then why would someone from out of state want to attend this university as well?
Right.
And just need to just think about that. I think it's all about positioning, all about brand. And so much of this is, signaling. That's why we have these high prices, right? That's why it costs 80 grand on paper. It's because then I can say that this is something that's really valuable. But I think people are wisening up and they're saying that, okay, show me what's the average alumni starting salary, right?
Right.
Why would I pay 300 grand for university if I'm going to come out and make 60 grand a year? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. That's wild. It's almost like, it's like our conversation today. We had our first connection. It was definitely laggy and like there's all sorts of stuff. And then, you have your brother traveling back overseas, right? There's a lot, it's real life happening. Technology's happening. And then our lead IT project manager, like something happens and people are like, oh my God, it's technology. Like what's going on? He's like, it's technology, go figure. Like sometimes you just can't explain it, pick up the pieces and move on. My point there is that this is messy, right? Like I feel like there's come this thing with college is you pick a college based on where you want to be, right? Which is there's a lot of proof in that. And that you're supposed to go down this set path for you. And then when you go down the set path for you, everything's going to work out. You take your loan, you go to school, you meet your potential spouse, right? You go to football games and then you graduate, you get the job and then you get the house and then blah, blah, blah. And all that stuff's been disrupted. And instead, it's more of like, what's interesting to you? Where do you want to play for a little while? It's messy. It's just life and shit's happening. And I don't know what to make of it. But to like go down and like, here's exactly how it's going to, like, I just talked to someone recently who was like going to do something else and everything changed paths. And now he's an attorney doing offshore trusts, right? Like he's like, I don't even know how I got here. And things happened along the way where you have, even at a professor at school says, don't do that. And I don't know what that all means, but picking this thing that you have to go down some certain path for college and that's going to ultimately lead you to this destination that like, I don't know, in 5 years, we don't even know what the destinations are going to look like, let alone 20 years from now, right? Everything's changing right before our eyes. A year ago, AI was here, but it looked very different. This conversation is going to come out and probably a few months after that, ChatGPT 5 is going to come out. Who knows what that's going to do, right? So I don't know. I'm sure you have thoughts on all of where I'm going.
Yeah, no, I think it's so different. And I'm glad we're having this conversation because it's also given me an awesome opportunity to think about this. And I think it's so much about the people that you meet and the influences on your life. Like, I just think back to when I began high school, I was actually living in Europe, and we had moved back to, yeah, for my father's work, and we had moved back to Pakistan. And I was thinking like what subjects I should take in high school. And it's very like a British system where you take certain subjects and it's like not a lot of flexibility. And I decided not to take like sciences, right? So in high school, I didn't study chemistry, physics, or biology, right? Like formally. And I just think how different my life could have looked if I decided to study those things. But it was just literally like a few people advised my parents and myself that, oh, it's not a good idea to take those if I'm coming from, a Western education system. And that just influences the trajectory. Or even for myself, like meeting someone who had got into a really good school, who's able to mentor me, like in my life. And it's like these pivotal moments that really express everything. And I'm now my head is turning because one thing we're always thinking about in Kollegio is like, okay, the AI is great for personalization, but where can there be humans also in the loop? And I think that's really something fascinating where it's like, okay, as you navigate Kollegio, can you meet other people who are also on similar journeys and share similar ideas? And I think that could be something that's really interesting to elevate the human experience. But yeah, I agree with you. It's very messy. And that's kind of the beauty of AI is like the ability to personalize for each individual person. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to see where it goes and kind of being able to build at the precipice of AI because we're building into a system that we hope is going to get better, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, at ChatGPT 4, it's functioning at a certain level, but at 5, it's going to be even better. At 6, it's going to be even better. In and of itself, is just going to get better as time goes on. So
Yeah.
that's going to be really exciting to see.
Yeah. I like seeing like when Sam Altman comes out, he's like, I'm not happy with this version of ChatGPT or whatever. Like he said that in the past. And it's like, that's your baby. So most of the time you hear people come out and they're like just talking about how great it is. But you're being honest because, just like you're building in real life, like you hear about that, people are on X and they're posting about things that they're doing and they're making mistakes and they're doing this, they're doing that. And it's even what you said. I think you guys talk about this at Kollegio where like when you're applying to college, it's not checking the boxes that you think they want you to check. Like you're playing some sort of game. You're like, okay, I think if I do this, if I volunteer my time doing this, that's going to help me get into college. And you're talking about what's your real strength? Like, let's find that. Maybe it's collecting comic books, playing in a band. Maybe it is something to do with computers. Right? Like, who are you as an individual? And if that university doesn't value that, like I would say to the kid is like, probably wasn't the place for you. And who knows? They don't know you. They never got to sit. Typically nowadays, they don't get a chance to sit down with you and your family and talk about your life and spend like 3 weeks with you, right? Like they get a snapshot, I don't know, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever that might be. Like, who are you as a person? And just like keep pushing for it, right? And we said it's messy, but I don't think it's, you do this, you do that, you get this internship. And then, because what I hear is all their students like, I can't get this internship. Like they're interviewing with 100 businesses in the banking world. Let's say they want to go into finance, 100, and they can't get a job. They can't get an internship. And I'm like, well, what if you built your own business this summer? It doesn't matter if it's successful. It's the fact that you're doing something different. Like, I don't know. And I'm not saying go get that internship and that might work out and give you exactly what you want to be doing. And that's great. But I don't know. It's also changing so very fast.
And that's the reality of the job world. It just gets more and more competitive, and people like these full-time banking positions, for example, are recruiting in second year of college, which is like insane. Imagine like
That's great.
end of second year of college, you're recruiting for a full-time role. So that means you already have done the internship beforehand. It just goes earlier and earlier and earlier. Yeah, it's complete insanity. But I think that, yeah, and also to your point about high school counselors, I think those people are heroes, but the average high school counselor to student ratio is 400 to 1 in the United States. So, yeah, or yeah, 1 to 400. These people are superheroes, but there's only so much they can do. And there are these access organizations that are also great, but are also limited in fidelity. So it's like, how can we deploy AI at all of these pivotal points to help deal with this issue in scale? And I think it has a really excellent opportunity to elevate the workforce in a way that we've never seen before, where people can train directly for jobs, they can figure out what's right for them, they can get that level of personalized college guidance. And that's kind of the note I began with, and perhaps we can end with it as well, that this service that traditionally was only for the very wealthy is now for the first time has the potential of being given to every single student, right?
Yep.
And speaking to them in a language that they understand, being adaptable to who they are. And I think that's where we're going to see something really beautiful where, especially as we expand beyond four-year colleges, where every student gets that personalized tutor, that personalized coach, especially, and it's so impactful when you don't have those people in your community that you can go to who have gone to college, who have done XYZ thing, especially as those things change, right? Like if someone wants to become a prompt engineer, right, for example, like those things that didn't exist one year ago, 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
You're not going to have ready-made mentors. And definitely the kid who doesn't have anyone like who's gone to college in his community definitely has no mentor for that, right?
Right.
And it's like, and as new roles pop up and things like that, I think it's going to be a really exciting time. And that's kind of what we're hoping to be at Kollegio is one of the good use cases for AI.
Yeah. When I saw an article, read about it, what you all are doing, being in the college world, as we've talked about today, I was like, I want to like know what's going on here. And I want other people to hear it. And I know a lot of people need to hear it like that. One counselor for 400 students is crazy. I could just think about the amount of questions you would have. And if you don't really know where to look, because nowadays you can go online, watch videos and do all that. And there's amazing amounts of resources. You're a resource, right? And your company's a resource and people around you are. But if you don't know what to do, and I don't know how you would navigate it, unless you just opted out and said, we're just going to go to school and just kind of like build up for, which you can do that too, right? Like I said, it's messy. There's no specific one way to do it. But to have this as a resource for you and the universities sound like they're listening and you're having 40 conversations a month, that's amazing. So, Senan, how do people get a hold of you? Obviously, learn about Kollegio, the company, and where y'all are going. And if they want to read about the funding round that you just got and all about that.
Yeah, of course. So you can find me, Senan Khawaja, at LinkedIn, kollegio.ai, kollegio.ai. You can find out about us. If you think that there's, an opportunity to partner or something like this, definitely message me on LinkedIn. And yeah, if you think that it's something useful that you'd like to use, anybody can sign up and create an account. And yeah, thank you so much for having me, Eric. This has really been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Thank you for your time.
Of course. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Entrepreneur Perspectives. This show is produced by Quiet Loud Studios, where we create podcast writing and original media. Learn more at quietloudstudios.com.